Hey there, listener. Have you ever heard someone say, speak your truth, follow your truth? Well, how do you know that it's your truth? How do you know that the thoughts or feelings or experiences that you're having internally are the truth? Or maybe they're some kind of programming you picked up on. Maybe there's somebody else's energy that you came in contact with at some point. Today, we're going to be exploring how to fortify your inner knowing through physically feeling the truth in your body and developing that fine-tuned discernment. I've got Jennifer Spor, who is an author of multiple books. She's a spiritual mentor and channel, a multidimensional healer for spiritual visionaries. So if you've ever wondered how to figure out what's true for you, stay tuned. Every day there is a forgetting, and every moment there is the possibility of remembering. Remembering who you truly are, awakening to your body, to the inner world, to the experience of being alive. Here is where you find the beauty, the joy, and here is where you free your soma. I'm your host, Aimee. I'm here to help you move from pain to power, from tension to expansion, and ultimately from fear to love. Hi, Jennifer. Nice to meet you finally.
Hi, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful to meet you. And I'm just feeling this super excited, buzzy energy for our conversation today.
Oh yeah, me too. This is great stuff. I loved, just seeing what you put down on like the booking link, kind of getting excited about these ideas of multidimensional healing and also this idea of truth and inner knowing, because I feel like as I mentioned in the little introduction here, people talk a lot about speaking their truth, but how do we figure out what our truth is to begin with, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that's a great question to start with here for you. What is truth?
Yeah, I love this question so much because there's just this really deeply embedded societal programming, ancestral programming, in that everything can only mean a certain thing, right? Including truth. We are surrounded by all of this amazing technology and all of this abundance of information in the world to tell us what truth is. But at the end of the day, no matter how much information is out there or how well informed your ego mind tells you that you are, you're the only one that knows what truth is. And the thing is that your truth is subjective to your own reality and the lens with which you view through the world. And that is completely right. It's completely aligned and it's completely fine. We're all coexisting together in this amazing world, looking through it with our own unique lens as far as what our truth and our reality is for us. And so the question is, how do you develop this confidence, this level of confidence, this unwavering knowing in what truth feels like for you? We're living in a time when being really grounded in what truth feels like for you is not a nice to have anymore. It's an absolute fundamental foundational piece of what you need to feel confident in to navigate your path here. And so, how does truth feel like? What does that feel like for you in your body? The answer to that is that that's different for everyone. And the best part is that I guarantee everyone listening has already had an experience where they've had that feeling, right? It can be an intuitive knowing, but beyond an intuitive knowing, where do you feel that intuitive knowing in your body? So for me, it's a feeling that physically feels really grounded. And I just know, and I feel it typically in my sacral and my solar plexus area. I feel very strong and grounded, and it's very neutral, right?
Mm.
There's no fear, and there isn't even an overrelated sense of joy. It's just a knowing. It's a strength. It's a sense of clarity. So that's what it feels like for me. It could feel the same for someone else. It could feel, you could feel physical sensations, like you could get the chills. You could feel the tinglies in your crown chakra that would indicate to you physically that whatever it is truth for you. You may even audibly hear it, within your mind, in your
Mm-hmm.
mind's eye, or you may even, feel a sign, some kind of sign that feels like truth for you.
Right. Right. I know even some people are very like visual about it and they might even like see a sign like kind of
Yes,
outside their body that they feel physically. They like see something and they have
yes,
this reaction to it that goes, "Oh, this is telling me, this is confirming for me what I know by seeing something visual in their environment." I love how you're
yes,
pointing to the individual way that we're all wired through our sensory field to
yeah.
experience this in a unique way because I think that that's like incredibly important for people to understand is that if they're trying to feel something in a certain way in their body rather than just being available to what's being felt, right? And kind of getting quiet and sort of sensing in to what is, but we're trying to manufacture a feeling because that's what we heard it's like, or we heard someone else say, oh, this is what it's like. That can get in the way of what actually is your nervous system and your body's response, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even when it comes to tuning into that intuitive voice, right? Your soul's guidance. Over half of the time, in many instances, when someone thinks that they're following their soul's guidance, it's actually their mind, their human mind that they're following. And so really being acutely tuned in to your intuition and how your soul's guidance speaks to you is directly interconnected with getting really confident and grounded in living in your truth and what that means for you as well. So it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, with the work that I do with people, it's very physical and people are
Mm.
releasing like muscle patterns related to life experiences. But once they start doing this work with me, or if they have done some other kind of release work already, sometimes I will like literally just say something, or they will say something, right? Or they will complete a movement and relax their body. And one way that I kind of see truth show up for them in that moment, and it's very common, is people will take this like deep, settling breath. They'll and it's autonomic, like their nervous system just does it. They say like, oh, I realize now that this is connected to this, or this is why I've been doing this. And then they just take this natural
Uh,
deep breath and they just land. Have you seen people do that in your sessions
oh
work as
yeah, I've
well?
experienced it myself. And yeah, I see. I mean, I also can actually see someone's, like, their aura, like their skin, their complexion, like they physically become more radiant.
Mhm.
Like their light body actually shines brighter
That's
when that
awesome. Yeah.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I see it because there's different layers we can work with, right? And so
Mhm.
for you seeing it through the light body, for me, I understand that sense of like I watch like the smaller muscles of their face soften and their
Yeah.
eyes like appear to get wider instead of like these stressed out like narrow eyes. It's like everything like widens around their eyes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's just
Yeah.
these
You see
different
it.
ways of like
Yeah.
seeing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, in terms of the value, because I think there's absolute so much value when someone is in this place of searching, right? When they're still along this path of discovery and they haven't quite like landed in their truth yet, or landed in their body, or landed in themselves, right? What is so powerful about seeking guidance, right? Like maybe you could even tell a story of early on in your journey with this, right? When was a moment that you realized that you wanted guidance, that you wanted support and didn't want to try to just figure all this stuff out by yourself?
Oh gosh, that's a really fantastic question, which has a lots of answers. And it's just like, where do I start? But the first thing I want to say about answering this question is that so I am someone, it's important to understand that I'm someone that my entire life, before what I would say was my initial catalyzing kind of spiritual awakening, I've always been a learner. I've always been like a sponge. And when it comes to learning and evolution, I've always been someone who has invested in support, someone who's always been in touch with my own intuitive voice to the extent that I've always followed that guidance, right? But a fun story, and also also, I would say the first huge catalyzing kind of time in my life where I realized I needed support to make some major changes. I'll share that story. And that was probably been about 15 years now, but I used to be in a different career. I worked in corporate, but I worked in the retail industry. So I came up through the ranks probably starting at like 19. So worked in the stores, worked my way up, and like so many of us are taught to believe by traditional society, checked all those boxes off the list, right? I reached a point, I did enjoy my work in that industry for a long time because I love learning and I love helping people. Okay. But I reached a point where I was no longer feeling challenged. Also, it was feeling harder to make a difference because there was just more and more like bureaucracy in my day-to-day existence. And so that was really when like the fog started to lift and it was like, wow, I thought I was always going to be here. And it's looking like that's not going to be the case. So I started pondering around what was next. Didn't leave my career right away. What I did do though was immediately started opening the gateway to my intuitive abilities that were already there. So I immediately started investing in meditation practices, and whether it was just like opening my general intuitive gifts or like learning how to read, getting certified to read oracle cards. I mean, like I was just investing in all of these different things to open myself up to get to know myself. First of all, because what I had realized at that point in my life was that I didn't really know myself that well, because I was in a really high level, like executive position where I was on all the time. So my job at that point took up a lot of my energy and focus and awareness. And then outside of that, I most of the time just kind of went along with whatever my friends and family wanted to do. Right. So I was just starting to wonder, like, wow, I don't really think I know myself that well. So I was really delving into my spiritual development and getting to know myself at that point. And then, to make a really long story short, about a year and a half after that, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and that experience was very catalyzing for me in terms of like shaking me loose. You know, sometimes we need to be cracked wide open. And it was my heart being just like so broken, feeling so raw during that time that it really just like cracked me open to the point where I was like, okay, I can't, in my own integrity with myself, continue to stay in a lifestyle and a career that is not lighting me up anymore. So, shortly after my mom transitioned, I decided I wanted to move from the East Coast back out to Idaho, near where I grew up, to be closer to my rest of my family. And I did it. Okay. I did it not knowing the path ahead. I didn't have it all figured out. I had waited to make that change where I got to a point where it was like I was so done that I couldn't stay where I was for one more moment. I did work with my company to transition out of that role, but I made the decision that I was taking action and I wasn't going back. So during that time, I was having this tremendous awakening. I literally like rented my house, packed up my car, and headed out west, drove across the country, left my house, all of that behind. And when I got out here, because I'm still living in Idaho now, when I got out here, I needed help. I knew I needed help. I needed a lot of support to not only work with someone who could relate to what I was experiencing and how I was changing, but also to support me in integrating in how my entire external life was changing as a
Yeah.
result. So I invested in therapists, because I had lots of trauma and survival stuff coming up around the time too, you know, to summon the courage
Yeah.
to make
And
that
being
leap of
back with your
faith.
family too, right? Being back
Right?
in your place of origin
I was
geographically.
like, my nervous system was
Yeah.
like, woo, I was a hot mess. So I invested in therapists, healers, psychics, other coaches, and it helped me a lot. And what also ended up happening from that is that I realized at the time I was hard pressed to find someone who could provide me with the all-encompassing support I was looking for, right? And that was what led me to the realization that I needed to become an
Become that.
entrepreneur, that I needed to step up
Yeah.
and be that person. So that's how this path of what led me to where I am today was born as well, through that willingness to reach out for that support, to have the willingness to do all the inner exploration and kind of just stop hiding from all the parts of myself, right? That I didn't even realize until that point, quite frankly, had been concealed for so long. And then that willingness to reach out and invest in support also led to a whole other path.
Did you know that your muscles are holding on to thoughts, memories, and feelings? If you have a tight neck or back, you're not just getting old, you're experiencing a buildup of tension from the life you've lived. Most people don't know this, but there is a part of your brain that can reverse and prevent chronic tension. When you relax your muscles, you not only move better and regulate your nervous system, but you also free yourself from the grip the past has over your body. So you can live with freedom, confidence, and enjoy your life now. How does that sound? Join me, Aimee Takaya, and discover what my clients are raving about at youcanfreeyoursoma.com. Yeah, well, and, kind of going back to the getting broken wide open and the confrontation with death through what your mother was going through, right? That's another way that sometimes we break through to truth. And it's a very visceral experience in our body when we're confronted with our mortality, we're confronted with our human fragility, and it doesn't have to be firsthand. Like certainly, a near-death experience in our own bodies is a pretty traumatic thing,
Yeah.
right? But it sometimes is through witnessing of another person in that experience that we get in touch with this, like you said, this line that kind of got drawn where it was like, I can't keep living this way. That's not authentic. That's not fulfilling. That's not lighting me up, as you said, so I
Yeah.
think that's a really great example of like the ways in which truth can kind of sometimes be this very visceral experience in our bodies. And whoever's listening, if you've had a time like that, these moments where again we're confronted with our mortality, we're confronted with the fragility of our human bodies, that we get that really deep dose of truth. At least it's possible. I know that some people have different reactions to, to being confronted with death. And sometimes we just do the opposite. We like turn off, we dissociate, we numb out, right? But there's also that potential for, as you said, a great catalyzing effect and an opening of our physical body to life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, yeah, there are many instances, even other than experiencing the death of a loved one. I mean, having a near-death experience for ourselves. I mean, I've experienced that too. And heck, becoming an entrepreneur and discovering and knowing that Mother, Father, God has put this call on your heart to bring these gifts and wisdom to the world. I mean, that's more than enough to shake you loose too, because when you're putting yourself out in the world, it's all coming out. It's all coming out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So then I have another great question kind of along this lines of feeling the truth in your body and the knowing, as you've been someone who's kind of sampled all these different modalities probably and many different teachers and guides, how did it feel to find someone that was not quite in alignment for you, right? Versus finding someone who you felt like that yes to, like this is aligned. Can you kind of describe, maybe don't say names or anything, obviously, but just like two
Yeah.
different scenarios to give us that like contrast of what that's
It's
like to be like versus yes.
it's so interesting. You're asking like the best questions ever. I can't wait until people listen to this. I've experienced a lot of trauma with
Mm,
coaches and teachers.
yeah.
Oh, when I say a lot, there are at least two. Okay. There are two big ones. And when I decided to invest in working with these people, initially it felt like a hell yes. Okay. Now, in retrospect, The reason why it felt like a hell yes is because I still had some unhealed trauma. I also still was running on programming that taught me I needed to look outside of myself for the solution to my perceived problem, right? So that was, in retrospect, why it was a hell yes to
Well,
work.
it kind of spoke to your wounding, that
Yes,
those people were speaking to
exactly.
your
It
wounding.
spoke to
Yeah.
my wounding. I wasn't making a decision from an empowered space, from truly feeling my truth anchored in my body, right? I was managing a lot, like being an entrepreneur, all this healing that was coming forward at the same time to be transmuted. And I wanted someone to help me fix it. And that wasn't intentional, it's just who I was in my consciousness at that time. And so making the decision to work with them, and then realizing later, some longer than others, like later down the road working with them, there were just red flags and signs that started to pop up in terms of like maybe their fear-based behaviors or reactions to certain circumstances or situations or transactions, that were handled in a way that in retrospect were handled that way because of their own fear-based
Mhm.
beliefs and things wounding, right? Their own wounding and things that they were experiencing on their own journey. And so eventually me realizing that, right, on my own journey of healing in terms of what is truth and what isn't. I mean, very simply, anything that's negative in nature or fear-based just isn't truth. You don't even have to dive into the particulars of it. If it's fear-based or it's negative, something is amiss, but we should never feel the relationship between a healer, a coach, a teacher, and their client, their person, is the most sacred relationship,
Mhm.
like ever, next to your relationship with God. Okay. Like this is beyond family. It's so you definitely, should be feeling aligned in terms of completely safe in
Mm.
the space to where you can be vulnerable and talk about anything and reveal your most inner whatever it is with that person and still feel empowered and feel in fact even more empowered after doing that, right? Not feeling less than.
And
So
diminished, right?
exactly. So I eventually realized that and left, those relationships, and it affected me for a while, actually, because I also realized that in some of the training I had received or things, that were real and substantial that I did learn from them, because there was some of that too. I had to learn how to separate the person from the information. What I experienced with that person wasn't all, and there was a lot of good as well, and being able to discern that and pull that out. I
I
feel like I went on a bit of a tangent, but that's what was coming forward to share with you.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like being able to, I guess, digest something, digest something in a healthy way, rather
Yeah.
than like when we're kind of in this fearful place. Like you can imagine, like if we just get like really visceral with it, it's like IBS or like diarrhea, like just get rid of it, just get it all out.
Yeah.
Like I'm not processing this, you know what I mean? Or constipation where we're like holding on to something and holding on and we're not letting it go and we're starting to feel heavy and sick, right? But what does it
Yeah.
mean to like fully digest an experience where we take the nutrition and the value that was there, and then
Mhm.
we like, have our bodies regulated enough to adequately dispose of the waste and the things that were not nutritious, and actually break that down. So it makes sense that it took you some time to get to the point where you could like fully digest those experiences and take away the nutritious, nourishing
Yeah.
parts and let go of the things that were out of alignment or that were fear-based and manipulative, right?
Absolutely. And I certainly don't want someone to listen to this and feel discouraged or put up a guard or a wall around their heart to be distrusting of people, right? It really goes back to what we've been talking about, which is that the importance of knowing what feeling anchored in that truth feels like for you and using that as your foundation to make all of your decisions, whether it's
Yeah.
who you're investing in support with or any other area of your life. And I love what you said earlier in our conversation about that, like that feeling of just right. So
Yeah.
if you're following somebody and you're looking to invest in support with someone and you're looking at their information, you're feeling into their energy, and it gives you that feeling, then you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that kind of brings me to the other side of the spectrum here of, you know, let's have you think on some of your most profound teachers, people who just made such a huge difference for you and the way that that felt in your body, receiving their nervous system to your nervous system, receiving their teaching. Can you describe a little bit about like what the other end of that kind of dichotomy is like when it feels like this really deep, meaningful, nourishing space to be held in?
Ooh, it feels so expansive. It feels like home. And home feels, and I'm even feeling emotional about that when I think about it now. Home is like what truth feels like in your body, right? It's different for different people, but what does that feeling of home feel like for you? I think it
Mhm.
goes back to what I was talking about when I was sharing that previous story too about, you have that kind of feeling, that
Mm.
feeling of relief, that feeling of your nervous system being relaxed, all of your body being just relaxed. That feeling of what that is for you is going to be unique. I feel like I'm going off track a
Yeah, well,
little
I
bit
think
again. I'm really just like,
a great word is like some relief, like you feel a sense of
yes,
like relief and surrender, like it's like okay, like I can let go of this sense of
yes,
needing to control, or
yeah.
make sense of. It's okay to relax into what is like really just here and now in this moment with this
It's
person.
also validating too. It's
Mm.
also validating too, because for me, working with someone like that, they're bringing forward some of the deeper stuff that I maybe had some semblance of knowing about, but haven't been successful in breaking through that pattern or whatever the challenge is on my own. So, I am a huge advocate of teaching and empowering other people to be independent to an extent on their
Mm,
path.
mm.
But sometimes there are times that we can't play all the roles, that it's hard for us to receive the deeper healing
Right.
when we're trying to play the role of healer. And there's a time to just step back, right? Surrender and allow yourself to receive, to be the receiver,
Yeah.
to be totally present to that.
I mean, I feel you on that. And I feel like the people who've supported me and guided me, and I've had so many like just wonderful experiences, I'm
Yeah.
grateful to say, like they've also taught me as a healer and as a giver in the world how to hold space for others, how to be there. And
Yes.
because you get in contact with that energy and it affects your physiology. It shifts
Yeah.
your nervous system. You're co-regulating with this person. And then you learn what it's like to be held in that kind of space, right? And then that's
Yeah.
easier than when you're providing that space to tap into that, like and it's sometimes not even until like years later that I really recognize like, oh, this person made such a big impact on me. And in a way, I'm almost like channeling their energy. I mean, with one of my mentors, they have actually passed. And so I will call on her to be present in the space with me when I'm with,
Yeah.
certain clients that I feel like really need her, you know?
Yeah.
But it's that feeling of bringing in those teachers and those guides and those masters, right? And being part of their lineage of knowledge that's getting now transmitted through your way of being. So allowing
Mhm.
yourself to be held in, in a container, in a space with a guide, I think I mean, honestly, if I was like running a training to like make someone into me, like it would be a prerequisite to be held in space with another person in this effective way, X amount of times as part of their training. Like you receive this, so you know what it's like to receive this well, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that relationship with that person, whether they're still here on the earth plane or in the ethers, is really indescribable, and it's priceless. It's truly priceless.
Yeah. So I know I have an answer to this question, but I would love to hear yours. If you have a client and maybe they're looking to find a business coach or someone in like a specific niche that maybe you don't practice in, or they're like, okay, Jennifer, I want to add this component, but I want to make sure
Mm.
that I find someone who,
Yeah.
is aligned for me, right? And you're having them connect in with their truth. What are some things that you would say to them to look out for? Right? What are some green flags and what are some red flags? And this could be like how they might be experiencing it in their body or what to look for in another guide.
Oh, so juicy. Okay. So green flags, circling back to what we've been discussing, how does being in their field feel in your body?
Mm.
Do you feel that sense of home? Do you feel your truth, right? That's really all you need to know as far as a green flag. I would say one other green flag would be, in however they're showing up, are they speaking to what it is that you're being called to?
Is it relevant in a way to what
Yeah,
you, yeah.
exactly. Is there relevance, right? Are they sharing wisdom that aligns with where you're seeking to go on your journey, right? The best mentors, coaches, teachers, whoever they are the people that they don't have to have it all figured out. They may even only be a few steps in front of you, but are they
Mm-hmm.
sharing wisdom that speaks to the direction, that you're
Yeah.
being called to? So that and how you're feeling in your body would be the two greatest, like green flags to look for. The other, as far as red flags, anyone that is projecting like a sense an overinflated sense of urgency with you to work
Mm.
with them, that's a red flag, because again, you have to feel in your body that it's aligned for you. And there's a difference between feeling truth and alignment in your body to move forward and working with that person versus, oh, it's not time for me to work with them because I can't afford it, or I'm not sure how I'm going to, what's going to unfold in terms of all the money I need. And I bring up the money piece because it's just like such a common scenario for so many people. So that overinflated sense of urgency and kind of pushiness. The other red flag, and this is a big one, if you're feeling drawn to work with them from a fear-based place, if they
Mm.
are speaking to you in your content, to your struggle, to your problems, like too much, if they're hooking you in to work with them from an ego place, that's a red flag. And
Mm.
that is rampant in the world.
Yes, it totally is. And I love that you're saying this because it really speaks to just the breadth of experience that you have as a guide and
Yeah,
also as an entrepreneur, kind of looking out across like the board and going, oh, there's these ways that people are operating that obviously for you, you've come in contact with it and your inner knowing says, your inner knowing says, that's not where it's at. Like they're missing a piece here, or they're speaking to, the wounding, or they're speaking
yeah,
to, I mean, in one way it's like the pain points. And I don't think it's like totally taboo to speak to the pain points. That can be useful
no, yeah,
sometimes, right? But if it's the whole like hook, line, and sinker, right? Which
yep.
is focusing too much on the problem, like I'm going to solve your problem. It's like, oh, I'm going to solve your problem and I'm going to help you, figure out how to solve your own problem in the future versus like you need me and you're not going to be able to figure this out alone, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to share something very profound and paradigm shifting for everyone listening, which is that when you can make the paradigm shift from looking at your experiences as a problem to
Mm.
solve to instead a skill to attain, that's life changing. So when you're searching for that next mentor, that healer, that teacher, for someone who is a fit for you to the direction you're being called to on your path, looking at making that investment decision from a place of where am I being called to mastery, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, I got that deep breath and my body relaxed when you said that. So I know
Yeah,
it's true for me, like it's really true that, looking at the thing, we look at things as problems and say something's wrong here. And a lot of times it's just an invitation to greater
yeah,
growth, invitation to a deeper learning, as you said. And I think
yeah.
that's like, yeah, that's really where it's at. So thank you for that. I had another question a moment ago. What was I going to say? Oh,
Mhm,
going back to the way that you operate as a guide for others to learn how to be more self-sufficient, right? I
mhm.
guess there's probably a more, mystical way to say that, but kind of to be able to generate this healing for themselves. Can you speak a little bit about like, how you work with someone who might be in a very disempowered place?
Yeah, wow, we could talk all day about that. It really, because everyone is in a different kind of space on their path, but starting with someone who's pretty deep in it, I would say, the most important place to start is with establishing solid foundations, because someone who is feeling like they're in a place like that on their path has been putting themselves off for a
Mm.
long time. And the key to living empowered on your journey to making decisions based upon your truth and feeling confident and anchored is to have a strong foundation. And that starts with the self. And so for my own journey, like I've been meditating 7 days a week for over 15 years. I do not skip days no matter where I'm traveling, what I'm doing, nothing is more important than creating that space every morning for myself. And it's not very long, but it provides me what I need to really tune into myself, to feel into my body, to receive what's coming forward, whether that's something I'm sad about or a guide or God or something else is coming through me, whatever that is, I'm just setting aside that space. So no matter where someone is on their path, meditation absolutely is a fundamental piece of
Mm.
that foundation. Sleep, having
Mm.
sufficient sleep is everything, because when we are tired, we're not as productive, we're not feeling as clear in our body, in our mind. So making sure there's a foundation of enough sleep, and beyond that, having some type of practice that involves movement or stimulation for your body
Mm. Mhm.
to not just like keep your body feeling like good and strong, but to keep your nervous system clear and like keep your energy flowing, right? Having some kind of physical and or energetic practice every day is super important. That is the first place that I start with every,
Yeah.
is looking at, what are these very core basic foundations in place. Let's get those consistent, and then we get into, right, like being intentional. What is your vision? What do you want for your life in all the major areas, right? Like health, wealth, relationships, purpose and mission, because I tend to attract people, clients that have a path that they're being called to create and share with the world, right? And there is no playbook for what they're being called to manifest. And so it's not even that someone comes to me not being clear on what that mission is. It's more that they don't believe it's possible, or they have some
Right.
kind of element of imposter syndrome, right? So when you get those other foundational pieces I was talking about into place, then they really start to feel like in their body, okay, like
Yeah.
I'm seeing what's possible.
Mm.
And from there, we just, it's building, right? You're just building one thing on top of the other. And that's how I work with people to achieve sustainable, ongoing evolution and ascension.
I love that you focus on these foundational pieces, and I wasn't even sure what you were going to say, like in the beginning, because like I don't know, when people hear that, even me, sometimes when I hear like spiritual mentor or energy healer, I'm like, oh, she's going to have me like do a chakra meditation or like chant something or like do Reiki on myself. And I'm not saying those things aren't important, but the things that you described are like really very grounding on a physiological level, right? Like sleep, right? And then there are also these pieces that actually relate to those multi dimensions, right? For example, meditation is a slowing down of our body chemistry. It's literally a stillness for a period of time so that we can
Yeah.
actually experience what is right now and what's coming through. It's very awakening to your intuitive senses, but it's also very
Yeah.
grounding in your body, right? So meditation kind of like takes you through the gamut of those different dimensions. And then sleep is regenerative. Sleep is like one of the most healing things that we can experience in life. We're supposed to do it for like a third of our lives, right? To
Yeah.
regenerate and replenish, right? And so that you have that conversation with people about their sleep, that you promote and say this is like really important. Because the other thing that we're working with when we sleep is like our unconscious, right? And helping people digest those life experiences through their dreams, and things like this. So yeah, I'm just like very impressed with your list of the foundational grounding pieces here because yeah, it's as someone who came from a very like physical yoga practice, I'm often very attracted to more literal ways that we can support our spiritual growth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, teach people intuitive development and how to get all of the things that we've talked about today. I teach other people about too. And there are much more advanced healing technologies that I use on some of my clients too, because when you're in a place, once you're feeling rested and all of that, tuning into yourself, then you're dropping all this resistance that has been stored into your body. And wow, let me tell you, you just freaking open the gateways to your soul gifts and all
Mm.
of this other stuff that like wants to come forward. And then it becomes, okay, let's hone that while we're taking grounded actions in the physical world, right? To bring all of that vision to life.
Love it. Yes, yes. I think you're very astute on this subject, and I can literally like feel that you have an embodied vision of this. You have an embodied vision of what, it means to expand spiritually, that it's not something that we're like leaving our physical body behind. Our physical body's like the foundation of all of that, ascension on a spiritual plane.
Yeah, we're half heaven and half earth.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, Jesus and Mary Magdalene are great examples of that, of
Mm.
people who on their own paths for themselves and in like teaching others. This is, especially when people hear about Jesus, they think automatically Christianity, and it's not about that. Jesus actually transcends religion constructs. Okay.
Mhm.
This is about like they, in their time here, were really people that this was a devotion for them. They really sought to embody their divinity. And to me, that's what we're here to do. We're half heaven and half earth. We're here to bring forward the highest essence of our soul through
Mm.
this physical body. And just like, how glorious is it that we get to see how that's expressed in the physical?
Yes, yes. Well, and you're reminding me, I met this pastor on like an airplane a couple of months ago, and he was talking about Jesus but the way he was talking about it was like so different than what I usually hear, quote unquote, which was that he was describing that before Christianity, a lot of these religions, you would have to like go to a person to connect with God. There would have to always be like a middleman between you and God. But when
Yeah.
Jesus came into the world, it became this thing where you had this direct personal relationship with
Yes.
with God in human form, that it didn't have to be like you were this lowly being, right? And then you had to like go to the priest or go to the, whoever who was divine. It became this direct, and that's what's so empowering about it, right? With so empowering about Jesus as a guide and as an energy, is that you have that direct personal relationship, right?
Yeah, every single one of us, we are an extension of God, of source creation. We have that connection. And when we peel back the layers of trauma and working too much and not getting enough sleep and just not taking time for ourselves, then we begin to not only feel connected with that and see that, but we feel that.
Mm. Yeah, it is. It's absolutely felt in our bodies, and then seen through our being. You described it earlier as our light body, and
Yeah.
this radiance, this glow that starts to be something we can connect with more and more, and we can kind of keep reorienting like
Yeah.
ourselves to that, rather than all the stress that occurs.
Yeah. Loving this conversation so much. So delicious.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'm curious, I know you have a podcast, so maybe you could tell our listeners about like the kind of, I mean, maybe these kind of conversations, or maybe tell us a little bit about how that project's going for you, so they might want to have a listen too.
Yeah, this is actually my second podcast. I had another one before this, but my current podcast, Path of the Awakened Heart, it is along similar lines. It's really that show is centered around us embodied in our divinity, living the path of the awakened heart. Thus the name. That was like a divine download, of course. But I really focus a lot of energy in that show centered around highlighting other guests, other people who are living that path, right? So, like people who, like I mentioned earlier, have felt called to create a unique path in the world and they're out there doing it. And those are the people that I highlight on that show, other people like us. So I usually will ask the guests to share, their own origin story about what's called them to that work, how they're of service. And there's lots of other intuitive go with the flow things that come forward in those conversations as well. So there's lots of different topics that we cover, but the common foundation of the show is really that every person I'm highlighting is on that path. They're in it. They're doing it.
Yeah. And that's, got to be so inspiring to other people who are moving in that direction, who are
Yeah,
moving into that direction of, and I remember having these conversations some years ago with like my cousin, and, you know, it's like you can start to feel it building in you, kind of like that, feeling of truth in your body, when you can feel like, oh, I'm starting to move towards a more heart-centered way of operating. And you just, when you're in that place, it's like you want to surround yourself with that energy. You want to surround yourself with other people. And it becomes very clear, when you're around people who like are not in that, when you're around people who are like way too much in their judgment and in their neurosis, and they're not in their heart. And so I think, having a podcast like you do, and having people out there like us who are having these conversations, who are bringing this energy into the world, it's so valuable to those people who might not have that energy directly in their, everyday lives.
yeah, absolutely. It's so true. It's so important to intentionally surround ourselves with content, with other people that are on, similar journeys of ascension and who have a true heart's desire to rise, to learn, to give back. So important.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be human, to
Yeah,
be,
to
because
be
it's like
truly human.
we're
Yes.
not going to get away from humanity. Like, as much as we think that we've healed or we've grown, like we're going to get triggered at some point. We're going to get angry. Someone's going to cut us off in traffic, or, some family member's going to say something insensitive, and we're going to have a moment like that's not very dignified, and how can we
Totally.
like let
Yeah.
ourselves be that way and not judge ourselves or think we've regressed, or that we're like not on the path anymore, and like, oh, we fucked up. Oh, sorry, it's my podcast. I get to curse, but you know what I'm
It's
saying?
true though.
Yeah.
It's to be okay with that. It's to stop hiding from it. There's just
Right.
like so much shame and so much avoidance and so much of that lower vibe energy that we're taught to feel, that we have to feel if we're not perfect, if we're not checking off all the boxes. And it's okay to feel grief and fear and rage and like pure anger. It's about what you choose to do with it.
Yeah. And sometimes, for me, sometimes I've noticed that anger wants me to do something with it, but it's almost like
Yeah.
sometimes the doing something with it is like just letting it exist. Like
Yes.
that can be an active action to just like affirm
Yeah.
myself or just like let it exist, you know? And it's when I'm fighting myself and not letting it exist and trying to negotiate with like the upset that it just kind of gets bigger and more demanding, right?
Yeah. I mean, even in, you know, spiritual communities or personal development communities, right? There's it can be even worse in those communities, actually. The pressure that someone can feel to spiritually bypass and paper over, those emotions. Like there's still a
Mm.
problem with you, or you're broken if you still feel like that. No, that feeling is information, is what it
Yeah.
is. Again, going back to, is it a problem to solve or a skill to acquire?
Yes. Yes. Oh, good. Okay. I have a really good, like, maybe final question here for us to explore a bit, which is as someone who's worked with, all kinds of different people and clients, have you ever had a client get triggered by you or upset with you? Right. And again, like maybe it's nothing that you actually did, but oftentimes obviously had way more to do with their own wounding, right? And when that has happened, how has that been for you? Like, how have you navigated that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You ask the best questions. There is a woman that comes to mind. I had one session with her. She was very angry because she was in a very tough space on her path. She was experiencing a dark night of the soul. And right from the beginning, when she was looking to book a session with me, she emailed me because I wasn't available soon enough
Mhm.
for her. And I have boundaries. So this work isn't an emergency, okay? So I have boundaries, and I was just like, I she told me what she was going through. I said, I totally understand. This is the absolute earliest, date and time that I can meet with you. I'm happy to support you, and just being supportive with her, and all the things. And then when we got on our session, she was very resistant because she was very much in a place of like, this is the only thing that's going to help me, and you have to fix this for me. And I was trying to explain to her about releasing her resistance, and that's the way for us to be able to go deeper, to move forward. And then she proceeded to say some not so great things to me about who I was as a person and how I wasn't helping her. And she was just very angry in her tone. And I just let her say all of it. And I
Mm.
didn't defend myself. I didn't feel a need to defend myself. And we ended our session in not a great way. And I didn't feel great about that because, of course, I want to help people. But if someone is not willing or open for that, for what we need to do, then I can't control that, and I've been in a place earlier on in my journey of holding space for other people where that used to bother me a lot more. But it doesn't anymore because I understand and I know where that comes from. That doesn't lessen my empathy for that person at all because I know what it's like to be in a dark place like that. She actually emailed me, I don't know, it's probably a couple weeks after that, apologizing to me. And, she was still struggling, but she apologized to me and acknowledged that she was projecting her own
Mm.
stuff and that she didn't actually mean the things that she said.
Wow. I wonder how much of her kind of sitting with it and writing you that email was because of how you were very neutral in your response to her and you didn't kind of feed into her fire or
Yeah,
overly take any responsibility and be kind of like codependent with her upset, because I can totally imagine, a younger version of myself in that circumstance, like anxiously looking to fix it for this lady who's upset and I've upset her, and going into that
yeah,
mode with someone. And it sounds like based on your experience, you were able to just be really like, settled and neutral about it while at the same time, like also probably feeling your feelings and being kind of like,
totally.
ooh, this doesn't feel good. Right.
Yeah, no, it wasn't pleasant at all. And what you were saying about the urgency, like sense of urgency and need to want to fix, I've been in that space too in the past, and that comes from our own unhealed trauma and sense of self-worth to feel like if we rescue,
Mhm.
right? And at that point, we're not even actually making it about the client, even though it might seem like that on the surface, we're making it more about us.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. Wow, there's been so many wonderful gems of wisdom, and I love the way that you've just shared so openly with us about your experiences and the way that you work with people and kind of the energy that you bring. Would you like to share any final thoughts with our listeners today about this idea of feeling your truth in your body, fortifying that knowing?
Yeah. What's coming forward is even if for whoever's listening, even if you are someone who already has a grounding meditative practice in place, you're likely also someone who's listening who's feeling called to the next evolution of their path, because that's who I tend to attract. And I would say, encourage you to go back and revisit that and go within as to where is there opportunity for even deeper anchoring and deeper grounding. There's a lot going on in our world. We're living in a time, just from all my years of experience and channeling and other dimensions and all of the experiences I've had, this is the one where there's just so much information coming at us on a regular basis, and there's so much collective conflict and turmoil having. And as sensitive beings, it's so easy to get distracted
Mm.
by what's happening to other people and in the world. And so, more than ever, it's important to absolutely be a pillar of consciousness and focus on the direction that you're being called to. So, nothing, in terms of like an epiphany or hyper,
Yeah, well,
because the
again,
most profound stuff is the most basic stuff.
it
Okay.
is. I love that. I love it's very practical. That's the word I think I was looking for earlier, is that you have some very like practical advice that points to the more flowery woo-woo ascension, but it's like this practical basis that you're inviting people to
Yeah.
anchor from. I love that word pillar, right? And practice, because sometimes, when we are, you know, climbing up to our higher, vibrational states and we like really enjoy that space and we like want to stay there and it's just not possible to just stay there all the time and then we find
Right.
ourselves in these lower vibrations, right? We can judge ourselves as we kind of talked about before and we can feel like, oh, this pattern, this practice, this thing, I have to do it again, right? It's not done. I thought I did this already. But it's like what you're pointing to is that it's practice. And with practice, it's the road to mastery,
Yes,
right?
and that's the common trap that us humans in our human bodies all fall into, right? Is, oh, I'm listening to what Jennifer's saying, and I know. That's a trap. Okay. You got to look at, have I moved from intellectual understanding to embodiment? Because, yeah, you're telling me you know, but do you really know?
Yeah.
And where does
How
that
is that
fall in your
knowing?
body? Do you
Yes.
feel
How
it
is that
true?
knowing showing up? How is that
Yeah.
knowing translating into your behaviors and
Yes.
your actions and your
Yes.
day-to-day moments?
Exactly.
Yeah. Double high fives.
Boop, boop.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you and collaborate with you on this beautiful conversation. I look forward to having you on the show again some other time where we can continue because I feel like there's so many more layers that we could explore together. But maybe you
Yeah,
can tell people now, like where they can find you, where they can find your podcast, all of that.
I'd love that. I'd love to come back, and I loved our conversation just so much. So good. So much gold. Absolute gold. The best place to go to connect with me is my website because you can find my podcast there. You can find my service offerings there and pretty much just all things me on that website. So it's jenniferspor.com. So JenniferSpor. And that's that.
Wonderful. Awesome. Okay, check out her information in the show notes for further details and her bio. And yeah, have an absolutely blessed day. Hey there, friend. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your thoughts. Follow me on Instagram at Aimee Takaya and send me a DM about this episode. I'd like to thank you for being part of this somatic revolution. And if you'd like to support the podcast and help more people learn about somatics, consider leaving a review or a rating. And finally, if you'd like to have the experience of relief in your tight hips or back and learn to understand what your body is really saying to you, visit youcanfreeyoursoma.com. I can't wait to share with you what is truly possible. Bye for now.